Hey, it's Warren Hewitt here. Hope you're doing marvelously well. We're here at Vintage King LA with Jeff Ehrenberg.
Hi, Warren.
How are you, mate?
I'm very well, mate. Welcome to Vintage King.
Thank you. We've just spent the first 2 hours going through some technical difficulties.
We did.
So he's been very, very patient.
Yeah, and those of us in the audio world can relate to that, so there's plenty of patience going around.
Yeah, we're talking about mic cables, internal mic settings, all kinds of...
Adapters, yeah.
This is and we're here while they're working. They've got customers here, they've got clients here, stuff going on. The reason why I wanted to come here was because this is the best backdrop, as far as I'm concerned, around, where I can come in and I can look at everything. I mean, you've got things from, obviously we're seeing the Moog the Mellotrons, there's some Moog stuff over here, but beyond that, for us gear nuts, us aficionados, whatever, the guys that love equipment and want to know about this is the only place I can go and see everything that's current and compare and understand. And you're just down the street. I used to live 2 blocks away. So it's wonderful that you're here. And thank you ever so much for taking the time to show us around.
My
because
pleasure.
I can ask you lots of dumb questions. Because as you know, I'm not an expert.
Yeah, the shop, everything here is wired up and ready to listen to,
Great.
Which is pretty unique. There's not really any place like this in the world, except our other location in Nashville.
Which I just was in a week ago.
You were. I saw your Instagram from there.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But we like to say it's it's where our website comes to life, because there's just pages and pages of unique and rare and vintage and great sounding equipment on our website, and here it all comes together under one roof.
And the wonderful thing is we're starting 2 hours late because of technical stuff, but we've got people in here milling around doing real stuff, and I'm kind of glad, actually.
Yeah, we blocked off some time so that we'd be able to use the place quietly and privately, and then some folks came in to demo equipment, so it's a pretty good perspective of
what it's really like.
We'll get some B-roll of them, I guess, and show people, but
they're going to have to sign waivers and stuff to not be on camera.
That's your...
I don't know. In the wonderful world of the internet, who knows?
Yeah, but we've got someone demoing 500 series modules behind the camera, and some guys looking at us.
Yeah, guys have driven up from Orange County to try some stuff out there. I know the engineers here. I've worked on a record with him recently. I mean, this is how small our world is, which is absolutely wonderful.
It sure is.
So look, I have nothing prepared. I'm going to go around and ask you questions about stuff.
Okay.
And we're going to do more videos together. And the reason for that is exactly as Jeff said. I can come here, the way you have your mic set up here, we can demo and go from one mic to another to another. We can compare stuff. We can talk about features and stuff like that. It's not going to be about hard sell. It's going to be about education. And I love that.
Sure.
So let's get started. And I'm just going to really start at the beginning and start pointing out some things that I've been interested in knowing. For instance, this tape emulation, I haven't yet got to use it, but my friend Brad Wood, the 542, really, really loves these. I feel like Rupert Neve is bringing together all of the classic stuff that we love about it, but also understanding people's needs. Brad's using a pair of these first of all, he has the unit itself, where he uses it on the master bus, and it's adding so much color. Do you find that people are gravitating towards this now only with maybe a 2-bus setup to try and heat up their 2s?
It's been really popular for a mix bus setup, for mastering, or maybe even just a mono channel to use while tracking, just to cream up the sounds one at a time while doing overdubs. And and Rupert actually uses real magnetic technology to create the tape effect.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, rather than just overdriving transformers, which his circuits are of course in there.
Sure.
But yeah, the way it was described to me is actually 2 tape heads that are so close together, they're as close as the tape gap itself would be.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
That's interesting.
Jonathan Pines told me that, and I didn't know this until very recently, that Rupert started off at Partridge Transformers, designing transformers, which makes so much sense into the warmth that we associate with Neve products.
I heard even earlier than that he was a radar technician in the British Army.
I know.
And would have to use listen on headphones and use phase on radar. The degrees of phase would detect where an aircraft was coming in. So just using his own hearing to detect that 19 degrees a plane was coming in. Yeah. So
I'm going to get out on a plane and fly out to Texas and interview him. I've got to.
Yeah.
While he's still around, we're going to know this stuff. So yeah, there's so many things here that we can talk about. I'm just going to cherry pick stuff because we could literally be 2 hours in and only get to here.
Sure. So this section over here is
Yep.
kind of more mastering type equipment.
Wonderful.
You'll notice there's some holes in the racks. That's because we actually let people take the stuff home and try it in their studios. If you're going to buy a $7,000 or $8,000 equalizer for mastering, you really want some time to work on it.
That's great.
So we'll accommodate that. But
We were talking about that earlier, that I first met you maybe 11, 12, 13 years ago, whatever it was, and maybe even longer, you brought something over to my studio so I could use it on a recording session.
yeah,
And that was pretty massive in those days because my credit list was pretty, I'd had a couple of like albums that sold okay, but I'm in LA. And in those days, 10, 15 years ago, there was so many monster producers. I hadn't built a credit list, so for you to actually come down and give me gear to try was a big deal. And it really endeared me, and Mike had obviously already been so instrumental in helping. So that's great to have a sense of community as well, especially where you're based, because this is all musicians and engineers and producers live in Echo Park and Silver Lake.
Yeah, they do. And we don't look at a client's credit list before deciding if we're
No.
going to provide that kind of service. That's just the way we do business.
Great.
And so we offer that kind of service to people that are up and coming and hopefully are working together and helping them get
Yeah.
the best out of their sound will help their careers grow too. Really.
Yeah, I love that. So quick overview. This is funny because we were just joking with some of your clients here that I'm friends with. We're talking about that Joe Ciccarelli loves this. And when I first tried it, I couldn't get it to do what I wanted to do. And then Joe completely changed my opinion on it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this. We have talked about this in a couple of other videos, but I think I'd like to stop and talk about this for a second because it's the Shadow Hills mastering compressor.
Yeah, so the backstory on this compressor, it actually starts with myself and Pete Lyman. We own Infrasonic Mastering, which is
Right.
upstairs. And I met Peter Reardon of Shadow Hills on the very early days of Gear Sluts. He was posting photographs of some monitor controllers and some equipment he was building one-off. And at the time he was doing work mixing and mastering for Danger Mouse and Ben Vaughn.
Oh, wow.
And Peter has a lot of credits, Ghetto Boys and Old Dirty Bastard, had done tons of records.
Wonderful.
And so he was building equipment, one-off custom pieces, maybe a piece for Danger Mouse and a few pieces here and there, to be better than what he could buy. He would just get the best parts money could buy, the best caps, the best switches, just really go overboard because it was for himself and for his music. And so I met him on the really early days of Gear Sluts, posting some cool photos with the Bakelite knobs and the VU meters, and we quickly became friends.
Yep.
And Pete Lyman and I commissioned him to build the very first Shadow Hills mastering compressor.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and at first it started out with essentially a discrete VCA compressor, not reinventing the wheel, but just putting better parts into it.
Sure.
And it was 2RU with Bakelite with the Bakelite knobs and the meters. And then a few weeks or a few months into it, Peter brought back by his mic pre circuit, which is now the Gamma mic pre, and it had the switchable transformers. And
Right.
we're like, well, could you put the switchable transformers into the compressor?
Right.
Yeah, you read
Hey,
my
why not?
mind. Yeah. So, and so it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then he had his optical circuit, and he said, well, I could do the switchable transformers, I could do the optical and the VCA. And so I think we paid him like $2,500 for the first Shadow Hills master compressor prototype.
Wow, I wish I'd. That's a nice investment.
And he ended up spending like over $100,000 developing it and kind of making it what it was. But that
I'll give you $2,500 for that one. Is that okay?
for the first one, the serial
Yeah.
number one that we had in Infrasonic Mastering for forever. That's was sort of his introduction to one another, and then I brought him into Vintage King, and he became the retail brand that is Shadow Hills. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love to hear that. This is a very important part. What you're touching on here, I think, is very important for all of us to understand, is that what's been so well driven, what's created incredible pieces of equipment, we were joking about not calling it gear, incredible pieces of equipment over the years, is when engineers themselves get into design. And that's true of like the original A-range Trident consoles that people love. Is that was Trident Studios. I'm blessed to own a Cadet console which was made for Pi Studios, but it was all spec'd by the engineers.
Right.
So no Cadet console is identical to another one from the 70s because the engineers that worked in the studio told them what they wanted. The BBC basically commissioned gear with their specs for Neve and for Cowrec, and all these companies would make things specifically for them. And that's what I think is an important part of the story that a lot of people don't hear. They don't understand, or they need to understand that what's wonderful about this is it's designed by people that actually use the equipment.
Right.
You know, as opposed to a very cold kind of like, here's a piece of equipment. Because most of the stuff that we buy as consumers, like TVs and radios and stuff like that, is just some designer telling us what we want. What I love about stuff like this, and I think of Doug Fern as well. You know, Doug Fern's a great engineer and studio owner, and he built pieces of equipment that he wanted to use himself and designed by using his ears. So it's wonderful.
Or
and like I
Bill
said,
Putnam too, yeah.
Yeah, really incredible. So thanks for letting us know about that. I didn't know that part of the story.
And just to complete the picture on that, at the
Please.
time at Infrasonic Recording, I was doing more tracking and mixing, and Pete was a mastering engineer. So we wanted one compressor.
It did everything.
That we could, I could crush drum room mics on it. I could turn around and put it on the mix bus. You could use it on
great.
mastering. Yeah, so it's really flexible. It's a fun.
That's
piece.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really glad that we got the Dangerous Liaison underneath, because I've seen a few people have these, and the people that haven't love them. Where do you find... Now, this isn't always just mastering guys. I know a lot of guys that are using these just to be able to access different chains. Like Reed Shipham has one.
Yeah.
And even though he's working with an SSL 4000 and a buttload, as you know, of outboard gear, he has so much outboard gear, he still has like different chains that he wants to put through on his master bus, and this is his way of doing it.
Right.
So are you finding also equally mixers are going for this as well as mastering engineers?
Mixers, mastering engineers, sound designers, people that use outboard gear for creative effects, for you know, bleeps and bloops on sound design for commercials or film or video games. Or people that maybe just have, are mainly in the box, but do have a small amount of outboard gear.
Right.
And rather than having a patch bay to manage a small amount of outboard gear, they use this. So
That's really smart.
yeah, it's a really affordable, you know, by the time you added up a cost of a patch bay and the wiring for it,
Yeah.
you're really close to the Liaison, and it just adds so much more
Yeah,
flexibility.
Reed was just saying he's just like, when he, at the very end of his mix, he can just go, oh, do I like that stereo chain? Do I like that? Do I like that? And he just has, you know, he's blessed with a lot of equipment, but he can have different versions and color it in different ways. He had done some mixing for me, and I had loved it, but I just felt like it was just a little bit too crunchy. And all it was the case of like, oh, well, I'll just go to that one. And he could send me something, print it, and send it back to me within 20 minutes. And I love that kind of flexibility. Really wonderful. Okay, what else we got going on here?
Well, Maselec is another, you know, mastering line, really mastering specific.
Sure.
And this is a sort of all-in-one console. So you've got monitoring, input selection. It does. You can do inserts, 6 different inserts, and do. It's not as comprehensive as the Liaison, but you can do some flip-flopping, and
Sure.
it has a high pass and a low pass filter, an elliptical filter that lets you mono the low end.
Right.
So that's a nice effect for mastering, but especially a lot of people are doing vinyl these days.
Right.
And the Neumann amplifier racks we have upstairs have an elliptical filter built into them so that the low end is monoed. Yeah, so that helps the cutting head on the vinyl lathe stay in the center of the groove. You
Pete
know,
was talking about that when we were talking to him a couple of weeks ago, because he was saying a lot of the dance music, the reality of a lot of the very high sort of MS techniques that people are using is a lot of it is just flipping phase on wide low end stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes it very difficult to master for vinyl. For
yeah,
exactly
like some
what
of
you're
the
talking
Ableton
about.
stuff that's stereo tracks only, like something might sound amazing on headphones,
Yeah.
but then you try and cut that to vinyl, and you just cut grooves and blow lacquers, and
Yeah.
kind of creates a mess. So the elliptical filter, although it will alter the original production intent, it's a necessary tool for getting the most out of a vinyl cut. Stereo,
Plus that low end, that sort of 150 and below, or even as high as 200, coming out down the middle is pretty pumping. It's
Yeah.
exciting to hear.
yeah, sure.
So that's great. Not inexpensive though, the Maselec stuff though. It's pretty high profile.
Yeah, that's about a $10,000,
Yeah, that's
3 rack spaces.
That's probably your mastering guys mainly. I mean, I don't know many mixers that have this. Not that they, you know, if they had the budget, they probably wouldn't. The SPL stuff, I have a few SPL pieces. They're fantastic.
Yeah, SPL stuff is great. Their mastering line was on hiatus for a while, but it's back in full effect.
Great.
And we usually have an iron compressor here as well, the new compressor they came out with. That one's out on a demo.
Great.
Maselec multi-band is very cool. Even not using it as a multi-band compressor, but using the the EQ crossover points will still tonally and EQ-wise shape the mix a little bit, or a master.
Wonderful.
And then, one of the best de-essers on the planet, and one of the best limiters on the planet too, from Maselec.
Wonderful. And this down the bottom, it's just a
Tascam
CD
player. Yeah.
You're just using that to
can
run
put a
stuff through, and then you.
Yeah.
So this is great. So basically, you come here, you demo it. You can listen on ProAx. You can listen on the Amphion, which I don't actually know.
Amphion, yeah, they're a newer speaker line. There's one of the largest monitor threads on the internet is about Amphion.
I'll go and check it out.
Yeah, check it out. There's a lot of good reading, a lot of reviews there. The bottom is a subwoofer cabinet, and then they have 5 or 6 different.
And I like the barefoots with the speakers on the side. I see. Interesting. And then PMCs. So literally, as you said, you come in here, you could bring in your own CD.
Bring a CD, or there's a thumb drive input here, so just
That's great.
files on a thumb drive, you can patch it in. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You come in, listen. That's really, really smart. And then demo stuff. And I like you've got the loudness monitor here, so you can actually understand what you're listening at, as opposed to... Everything sounds good when it's really loud.
Yeah.
Okay. You got some Steve's stuff here.
Yeah, the new Pultex.
Yeah, I love his stuff. I'm blessed to be able to have some of that. So I it's not inexpensive, but it does sound absolutely wonderful. I don't know what the Buzz Audio is though. Can you tell me about that?
Buzz Audio is a line out of New Zealand. They have a pretty comprehensive selection of mic pre's, compressors, EQs, channel strips, and that sort of thing.
Yep.
This is their mastering equalizer, which has been, as far as quantity, our best-selling mastering equalizer for the last couple years.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's a really flexible unit. You can go from clean and surgical to actually imparting more saturation. So, to dial it down to 1, and it's just very subtly musical.
Right.
If you want more of a flavor piece, if you want to breathe more life into it, you can dial it up to taste.
Which is great, because in this very clean digital world that we live in, sometimes that's the glue that we want. Just that little tiny bit of second, third hum, more distortion and stuff.
Everything is detented. It's half dB steps, and you can bypass each band one at a time, so you can see what the band's, how it's affecting your music.
That's wonderful. And then you got your patch bay down here, so you can try out anything you like.
Yeah. So although these are more mastering versions of the EQ, this is the step version.
I have
of the
one
Pultex.
of these. Yeah, I have a pair of these.
Yeah, this rack, you'll notice, it's on wheels, so we can wheel over to our other EQ rack if someone wants to directly compare this version of the Pultex to the standard, or the Buzz EQ to maybe a non-detented EQ. We kind of separated the detented EQs as mastering,
Sure.
and then the ones with gradual pots for...
Yeah, I know, I agree. Mine are the 1As that he has as the mastering step ones, but I actually like, when you're still working in a hybrid or a full analog situation, whichever way you're going, it's just nice to have the detent, to be able to recall it.
Yeah.
I mean...
This is the 1S3, which in Vintage Kings history, we believe we've sold and serviced and restored more Pultex than anybody in the world as far as vintage ones go.
Yep.
And the 1S3, we've only seen maybe 4 or 5 pairs come through the shop in 22 years.
Yeah, I don't know it as well.
So the biggest difference with the 1S3 is you have this shelf at 5 and 10K. So you can attenuate the sibilant zone at 5K here.
Yep.
And then do a shelf back at 5K and bring up the top again. So you kind of get rid of sibilance, but you're not really losing much at 5K and above. It just does a nice little
That's nice.
Nice little clip. Yeah. So
I think a lot of people, when it comes to Pultex, don't really understand the balance between the boost and attenuation. Anyway, it's just it focuses, and I think that for most people, they probably think, well, why would I turn it up and then turn it down? It just sort of brings it in much, much tighter. I usually find I'm usually doing equal amounts of most, maybe a little less attenuation, but on mine, I'm obviously, the one is at 60, and so I'll boost a bit, but then I might bring in the attenuation just to focus that kick. Yeah, these are amazing.
I don't know if it's still the case, but at one point I heard that Michael Brower and Chris Lord-Alge were using these on Mixbus.
Yeah,
and
he does. He uses 70.
The vintage pairs being so rare, we were seeing them go for $25,000 a pair.
Whoa!
But this being reissued, it's available pairs for.
And I've known Steve since the beginning. I think I had one of the first pairs, and it was because of, to be honest, Jack Douglas. It wasn't because of me. Jack obviously is a famous producer of Aerosmith and Cheap Trick and John Lennon and stuff. So he got given one of the first pairs to demo, which I sort of inherited from him. And I will say the thing about Steve is he spent so much time. He became friends with Gene. the original designer. He got the original schematic. So when it comes to real Pultecs, I don't think there's anything as close as this. It really is.
Yeah,
incredible
like part of the story that doesn't really get told because maybe it's not that cool, but Steve, is also a PhD scientist. And
I know.
works for one of the large computer companies.
Works for HP, yeah.
Yeah, and used a laboratory they have to actually crush the vintage Pultecs down to particles and analyze every little molecule of the epoxy composites and what was in the transformers and what was in every single part. So it wasn't just going to get a transformer wound that was close to the spec.
Sure.
It was the epoxies and the glues and the thickness of the circuit boards, and everything was really nailed to a T. And he is Pulse Techniques now. He is the company. It's not Pultec in quotes. He literally is the company. So.
Yeah, and just because, quite frankly, he's also a really cool guy.
He sure is, yeah.
He's a sweetheart. He has no ego, and it's always a blessing to work with people that you actually like and do it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could stop and talk about this for hours, just because, frankly, the 1608 is something I personally know really, really well. I was in an ad for them. They didn't pay me. I was in an ad for them like about 8 years ago, when they first came out, because I used one of the first ones that we got through you for the Fray.
Yeah.
And we bought it. We got it fully loaded. I don't remember what configuration as far, but the thing about it, it wasn't the automated version like this. But the thing I would say about this is we used every single piece of this console, every single piece, because I was mixing on here, but I was sending direct out from the preamps. So this was my returns, but I was coming out of here. I was taking because I double mic toms. So I was double miking toms, sending to one track. I was double miking my hi-hat because I always use a condenser with a 57. So I was sending from here. It was ridiculous. I mean, and then double miking guitars. So I used every single auxiliary send, every bus, everything. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I loved that record. It came out great and did really, really well. And I attribute it to the sound of this. I also owned a 20-channel API, so I knew APIs really well, vintage one. And I'm not going to get into the long discussion about the vintage versus new. All I will say, as far as my ears were concerned, is I could get the same results and make it sound amazing. But instead of going bzz, bzz, like my vintage did, and I had to continually repair, this just sounded like a wonderful API with no buzzes and clicks. And very, very impressed with it.
And if you want a little more vintage flavor, you want to have fun hot rodding it, the 2520 op amps that are in this console, you can pull those out and put vintage Melcors in, or put any of the vintage 2520s in there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so some of my customers that own them will, on maybe a couple buses have the new op amps, on a couple buses have the old ones, and just have some different flavors to play with.
Great.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I say it all the time, I'm not an expert and I'm not very good with the dogma. To me, it's like, if it's great, it's great. All I can say is that, all joking aside, it was a wonderful experience. And I had come from starting a record in a studio where they had a vintage Neve that was not working properly. And it was a huge Neve, and we were pulling channels from the end and replacing them, and then those were going down and pulling and pulling and pulling. And then to just come to a place where the Fray had bought a brand new console that sounded so good, it was just like a breath of fresh air. And,
Oh, yeah.
and look, these days we all know you can make a great record with one really nice mic pre, one nice compressor and one mic. I mean, it can be done. It's all about creativity. But if you are tracking bands live and you do have the ability to be able to use a what you would call a small to medium format console. Yeah.
You can expand it. There's another 16.
Oh yeah, they
bucket.
did. They eventually bought another 16.
Yeah.
But we ended up using this and 4 1604s. No, what they called 3124s.
3124s.
Yeah, we bought 4 of those from you, so we had 4 of those. So we actually had 32 ins. So those were all running in and summing through Pro Tools, coming back on fader. It's pretty crazy.
Very cool.
And the rough mixes sounded fantastic, because there's something about those 2520s and the metering on these things. You can just slam them and work them really hard.
Yeah.
And they just sound good. They actually seem to prefer it when you overdo it.
And did you notice they just came out just last week with a new version of the 512?
No, I didn't.
The 512V. So
V.
it's the same mic pre, but it now has an output attenuator. So it's like having the fader on the console.
Nice.
Just a passive attenuator. It's not change. It's the same circuit that everybody knows. But if you want to overdrive the input and saturate the circuit more, then you have an output of attenuator that you can use to.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, I was just talking to Matt Rossbang, I'm sure you know, and like Matt's making these, he doesn't overdub, or he does, but rarely. So he's making live sounding recordings with incredible singers, incredible musicians. And the reality is when you're working super fast and people come in for a day or two and cut a record, a lot of things get like, this is good, I mean, God, you're working fast, things get overdriven. You listen to like those, we're talking earlier about those tracks, and you listen to the Marvin Gaye ones, and you hear, like he goes, you know, he's what's going, he goes up to what's going on, and you hear this crunch and this distortion, and the mic pre-overloading, or the mic, or the tape being saturated, all of these wrong things that we're taught not to do.
Yeah.
But they give it that, whatever, that certain thing that we love.
Yeah.
All of that wrongness together, and I think it's great that people are starting to embrace it, and I love that they've done that. I didn't know they had, so thanks for letting us know.
Yeah,
all right,
very cool.
Next up, CD player, obviously, so you can check stuff out.
More CD players.
So how's the the D box, the Dangerous box? That's just like an all-in-one
Monitor
control,
summing mixer, headphone. Yeah, for a smaller project-style studio, it's a lot of bang for the buck. And
8 inputs?
8 inputs for summing. You have digital and analog inputs, so you can, you know, if you've got an extra SPDIF out on your converters, you can monitor your DAW there. I've sold many of these to people that say it's been the best investment they've made in their studio. A lot of people are really happy with it.
I mean, one thing, I'm not a huge summing kind of guy, but I think if it provides a lot of bang for the buck, that makes sense to me. If you're going to be able to sum and then listen to see what analog can do, but also do something like give you headphones and talkbacks and all these kind of functions. This I can get behind, because to me this seems like it's giving somebody a lot of value for money. To me, just buying a summing box is a very specialized niche thing. I think I would prefer somebody to spend their money on the mic on the front end before doing it. But this makes perfect sense to me. This is the kind of product that if I was moving up the ranks, building gear and stuff like that, I could totally get behind it, because it's also your main monitoring.
And it also has an additional input if you wanted to, say, tie it into another summing mixer.
Oh, right.
Or another small sidecar, something like that, so it could still be the centerpiece of your studio, and you can grow from there.
Yeah, that's nice. Great.
And then this Coleman switcher is to switch between the monitors we have here. So this is all of our monitors that are under $1,000 a pair.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we've got under 1,000, and then over here is between 1,000 and 2,500, and then in the back room that we'll go into in a minute, it's kind of the...
Great. I love this. So are these doing well? Because I'm seeing these Yamahas everywhere now.
They are. They're one of the best sellers for the size and the price.
I think that we're all so familiar with NS10s. They actually sound a little sweeter than NS10s, but then everything does. It's so aggressive. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people moving to them, at least for their second pair, if not their first pair monitors. It's pretty great. And so you have the Auratones, the Avantone, I know people love.
Yep.
What are these?
Those are Genelec M30s. Yeah, that's a more affordable line from Genelec, and
good for them.
It's actually been one of our best-selling Genelec models. It's a really reliable, accurate speaker that translates very well, and it's light, it's portable. You can get a gig bag for them. So if you're traveling,
they're powered, yeah.
They are powered.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And they're under 1,000 a pair.
They're right about there, yeah.
That's great. And then what do we have on the far outside here?
Focal Alpha 65s.
Oh, it's the Focals. Right?
Yeah, those have been a staff favorite for.
Are those powered and under 1,000?
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, this is the 65. They have a 50, 65, and 80. So each model goes up in size, but we've all sort of gravitated towards this, even more so than the larger 80, just for accurate working class speaker.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, last but no means least, of course, is the Adams.
Yeah. Yeah, Adam was on a bit of a hiatus, but they're back in full force and
great,
just as popular as ever.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And of course, Auratones and the Avantones, like I said earlier, those get a lot of love. And the people I know that have the Avantones just freak out about them.
Yeah, these are active and these are passive, so you still need to pair these up with an amplifier.
Well, how much are the Avantones? They're under 1,000.
Oh yeah, they're
powered.
Yeah, a few hundred. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Great, this is awesome. So next up, we start moving into the wonderful world of SSL. And I came in to talk to you a few months ago about the possibility of changing my setup. And one of the things, and I'm still in that process of trying to figure out what I'm going to do long term. I may just keep the SSL and change out the power supplies and do all the fun things that could be done. But a part of me liked this a lot because of this functionality that you can use 500 series stuff.
Yeah.
It's just pretty remarkable.
Yeah, this console is really cool. I want one for myself. It's very affordable. Unloaded with EQs, it's under 20,000. I already have.
Which for the name SSL is, I mean, for some people that's going to be very expensive, and I totally understand. But to have the name SSL and to say under 20,000 is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and the thing with SSL is they're super analog circuits. The stage that they use for the line inputs and the busing amplifiers and the routing in the console, it's the same whether you're buying the under 20,000 XL desk or the X-Rack rack mount mixer,
yep,
or the Sigma, which is a summy mixer with automation,
yep,
or the AWS or the Duality. That
sure,
sound quality is the same across the product line. So with the more expensive consoles, you get technology, you get recall, and you get
right,
dynamics in every channel, and you get more bells and whistles. But as far as sound quality goes, it's really consistent across the entire line.
Which I think is really remarkable and very. Yeah, I love that. Maybe we have to bless Peter Gabriel with buying the company for that.
He's done a great job, yeah.
Yeah, he's done an amazing job. And I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan, so I don't mind name dropping Peter Gabriel in this. So this is great. How much is this little the little G comp? 500 series one.
That one comes with the console at that under $20,000 price. Yeah, you get that
That's nice.
500 series G comp, and for the console they added a high pass sidechain to it. So the earlier versions of this module didn't have a high pass sidechain, but now it does.
Oh wow! So it's continually variable from well, it's not continually, but 30, 60, 105, 125, and 185. That's great because I have the Vertigo, and I was using that quite a lot because it sounded close, because it has the same DBX VCAs in it.
Right.
It sounded pretty close to my SSL bus compressor, but it had that ability to sidechain. So putting this in it is a game changer.
So I think on its own, it's about $2,500.
So a bargain to have it with it.
Yeah, I know we're a store and I should have the prices more.
No.
I like to think more in terms of sound more than price. You know?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And with the purpose of this is not for selling, but to educate.
Yeah.
So, that's amazing. That's really, really cool. I think that is kind of a big game changer for me because it's the one thing that now it allows you to sort of think more creatively in your mix, because a lot of the time when you're dealing with a standard G compressor, which is one of the most remarkably best sounding compressors ever made that we are so used to from music, because from the late 70s on, pretty much everything for decades was mixed through a 4000 or something like it. But one of the biggest problems now, where we're in this world where the low end can be recorded so well, especially with EDM and any kind of pop music now, that's one of the shortcomings when I'm trying to maybe compete in that world, is that I can't have that low breadth because it just pumps my compressor so crazily.
Yeah.
So I end up doing all kinds of weird tricks, and I have to rebalance my mixes, or ask my mastering engineer to get down there and give me a little bit more oomph that I couldn't get. So this is a big deal. Excellent, and thank you for educating me on that. Right. What else about this features here? Because the 500 thing is a big deal, but as far as, so you got mic pre's.
You got 8 mic pre's with their variable harmonic distortion. So you got a fade here between the second and third harmonics.
Yep.
So 8 mic pre's.
Yep.
The first 16 channels are mono, and then channels 19 through 24 are in stereo pairs.
Right.
You have 2 mono aux ends, stereo Q or stereo aux end. And there's some cool routing features. So you have 4 groups, essentially the stereo mix plus 3 subgroups. So the subgroups feed into the stereo bus, and there's a little button you'll notice there. The groups are on this side of the console. You see the 500 button?
Yep.
That actually routes consecutively these stereo pairs to the bus. So if you say wanted to use this on your drum bus, it would route to the bus instead of the mix. Yeah.
That's very smart. Yeah, so you get to know this console well. You can be tracking, mixing, you name it, stemming out, doing all kinds of fun stuff with it.
And one really clever thing that SSL did with this console that I think is really in tune with the way people are making records these days is everything has a direct out that's post-fade. So
Nice.
all the effects returns, even it has the talkback compressor that was the Phil Collins,
Hugh
drummer.
Padgham trick, yeah.
Yeah, it's got that talkback compressor built in. The talkback compressor has a direct out, all the groups, the effects returns, all the line ins. So when you're done with a mix, you can, if you have enough inputs on your DAW, you can print all of those individual tracks back into the DAW. And so if you do have to recall and you're using outboard gear, you have captured your outboard gear at the level, at the relationship it was in the console.
That's really smart. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the, I'm not going to give away everybody's mixing techniques. I interview them and let them talk about it. But a lot of guys I know that are still working on SSLs are printing everything through the SSL back into Pro Tools, then zeroing everything out and doing all the automation in Pro Tools. So it's that, the way you're describing there is becoming very prevalent, even with guys that are keeping their consoles.
Yeah.
So that's pretty smart of them, because they've obviously got a good barometer on what really people are doing nowadays. Because we still want the sound that this can bring, but we want the flexibility of using whatever. It doesn't have to be Pro Tools, whatever their DAW is, where you know you can write automation in nanoseconds.
Right.
So yeah, very smart.
And having that, having the stems printed that way, if you get a chance to use the music down the road for licensing,
Yeah.
like my band licensed a song on YouTube, and they needed a sort of an alternate mix for it. It was really easy just to come up with an alternate mix, go just with the background vocals, no lead vocal, and do an edit exactly as it sounded the day we mixed it in the studio. So it's good to have.
I know,
this is a business too.
Yes, I understand. I licensed lots of stuff, and sometimes they come back with the strangest requests. And if you haven't printed everything out pretty comprehensively, you're into a full recall day of trying to figure out how to get it back again.
Or if they could just get the raw tracks and they have their engineer mix it,
Yeah.
then you don't know how it's going to sound. It's not really what you intended. So it's a nice
Yep.
nice safety net to have.
Definitely. So you just briefly mentioned the X Logic down here.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a lot of bang for the buck. This one's under 3,000. Like I said, it's got the same super analog technology that's in the XL desk, the Duality, the AWS, the Matrix. It's an 8-channel mixer with 8 small faders. So you've got actually 16 inputs on this side of the console, plus 2 stereo effects returns. So it's a 20 input mixer at mixdown.
Right.
Talkback, headphone send, Q send, and aux send. Really powerful little mixer for people that don't need a lot. Maybe if you have some outboard gear to incorporate, you already have some mic pre's. Great for if you've got some synthesizers or some stuff to submix.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. And then, you were telling me about this before when I came by. So
Yeah.
this is a lot more bang for the buck than it looks like on this little unit here.
Yeah, it's in Vegas mode right now. Sorry, that's a little obnoxious.
Do they call it Vegas mode?
I don't know. I don't know where that nomenclature came from, but
Pretty descriptive.
So this is a 32 input mixer.
Wow.
It's 16 stereo pairs, or you can take one of the pairs and make it mono.
Yeah.
And in this box is the same automatable attenuators that they use in the AWS.
Right.
So you can automate those attenuators with another control surface, like a Nucleus or an Avid Artist Mix. You can automate them from an iPad app.
Wow.
Or you can use the faders in your DAW and sort of make control faders, maybe using aux channels, to control the channels in here, and then you're saving your automation in your DAW that is controlling these attenuators. So if you want to mix large format automation style, where you come out of the DAW, you hit a compressor, the compressor's getting your tone by how much it's hugging the sound, and then attenuate after the compressor, you can do that with this mixer.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's the only thing of its kind that I know of. It's $4,500. And so not only does it have 2 buses, an A and a B bus, you could say use one for drums and one for a main mix. It's got control room functions, headphone, but it also has a direct out for every one of those automated attenuators. So you could insert this on, say, another console and automate the XL desk by adding a Sigma to it. Or even another Summy mixer, if you say had a Neve 8816, you could put this before the Neve 8816 and automate the Neve, and then print the SSL version of the mix, print the Neve version of the mix, see how they sound. So it's, there's a lot more than meets the eye on this.
So that's incredibly interesting. So if I have a fully analog, non-flying fader, non-whatever console, if I put this post my line amps, I've basically got SSL automation. I've got a way of writing automation in my DAW. So I could come out pre-fade, hit my console at a nice line level, so if it's a Neve or an API, hitting nice and hard and getting the sound of the console.
Right.
And then I have this post to do all of my fader automation, is that correct?
Correct.
So basically, for $4,500, I can automate my console.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
Wow, now you've opened my mind up to like other possibilities.
yeah.
That's really, really smart.
And even using it for if you had an analog tape machine in a console without automation, you could use the DAW effectively as the automation computer for this. Just have the DAW chase timecode on an analog machine,
Yeah,
and then have the DAW control this, and you've got
that's really
true
amazing.
automation. Yeah.
Very smart indeed. Yeah, it's making me think of all different possibilities for the future. Okay, another Coleman speaker selector.
Yeah, we like the Coleman stuff for our speaker selectors because it's just a switch. There's no active electronics, so it's just managing the switch and not changing the sound. Really true.
So, but this one is also kind of doubling up as so you've got a main level output.
Front end and then switching the back end. Yeah, because we usually have 6 pairs of speakers over here as well for comparison.
Great. The Symphonies, those are ever popular. I know a lot of people have them.
Yep, and they have the new Mark IIs that just came out.
Right.
So improvement on the user interface and on the D to A converter.
Great. Yeah, Tim Pierce has one. I think he loves it. And his stuff is wonderful sounding. Oh, so some more Jennies, some more Genelecs.
Yeah, we must have a couple pairs of speaker out on demo now, but this is our 1000 and above demo station. So Atom A7Xs, Dynaudio BM5 or BM6s, the Focal CMS line. That's the kind of stuff that you usually find here.
And then the Matrix here.
Matrix. So again, SSL. Consistent sound quality to the rest of their console line. This is actually a 40 input mixer.
Wow.
And 16 of the inputs have automation.
Mine's a 42, but it's sort of 40 as well. But it's like
9 feet long.
Yeah.
So this you get 16 channels with automation. It's much like we talked about on the Sigma. And then the remaining 40 channels are just either have control with the effects returns or manual line inputs. So what do you want to automate out of the box versus returns for what you want to automate in the box. Other than that, you have the analog mixer side, and it's also a DAW controller, and it will control 2 different DAWs. So if you mix and edit in Pro Tools but compose in Logic, you can control them both from this console.
Wow.
And there's a toggle switch that goes between the 2 modes.
Great.
And then you get hands-on control of your plugins. If you want to edit a plugin, the EQ, say the parameters of the EQ, low frequency boost, low frequency EQ selection, low frequency Q, mid, high. So it's a nice ergonomic, affordable. These are under $23,000.
Great. What's this?
This is a Rolly. It feels fun. It's a MIDI controller essentially, but it's a very touch-sensitive, fluid musical expression instrument. It's sort of a different way to play, and you can use the touch sensitivity not only with the note you're playing, but how far you're pressing down and where you are on the note, and you can assign all those parameters. I'm not much of a keyboard player. I'm a drummer, so I couldn't do it any justice. But
right. Yeah, I think I've seen somebody demo it online, but this is the first time I've actually seen one in real life. That's what I was wondering about it.
Yeah, there's some really cool videos on those.
Fantastic. Moving on, we've got a nice selection of headphones here.
Yeah. Some of the headphones are around the rest of the shop as well, but we've got, 24 pairs of headphones.
These I've been seeing a lot recently.
Yeah, they've been really popular. There's a lot of, how do you say the name? Odyssey. We know it as Audis. And they're using a planar magnetic technology in their headphones, which is unique to them. In my 14 years at Vintage King, I've never sold so many headphones that people are actually using to mix on. People might check on headphones or...
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Jason Lenning's bought a pair of these and is mixing on them.
Yeah, they've been selling really well.
I imagine they're not cheap though?
That pair is $9.95.
Right.
Then they do go up from there. They have a more affordable part of the line too. The EL part of the line is about $699. But yeah,
but I suppose if you can mix on them and it's $1,000. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I would equate that. $1,000 for a pair of headphones that you can mix reliably on, and you're getting the information and the detail that you would get on, say, $8,000 or $9,000 pair of studio monitors.
And probably the most important thing to factor in is that you can travel and be able to mix.
Oh, absolutely.
That's probably the 99% reason why I would. I would probably say that most people are buying these. I think Andrew Sheps was saying this. He's mixing in hotels,
right,
on laptops with headphones.
Yeah.
And if you've got something that's reliable that you love, but in any environment you can recall it. I mean, can you imagine going into every room and redesigning it acoustically?
Right.
So it actually becomes a bargain if this is your profession and you're traveling around.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. There's some great old favorites. DT7.
Yeah, we've got Audio-Technica, Beyerdynamic, AKG, Sennheiser.
What are these red ones?
Those are Audio-Technica.
Other Audio-Technica.
50s, yeah.
I was talking to Barry Rudolph, and his opinion on the lower end stuff is he really feels like the Audio-Technicas kill everybody on the cheaper stuff, that they make really great value for money. So I see you've got quite a lot of Audio-Technica, which is great. AKGs.
Yeah, we
those around.
We tend to sell cases of Audio-Technicas to big tracking rooms.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think they make great sounding stuff. What are these?
Those are Sennheiser 650s.
I don't know
really
this.
Popular for an open back, under $500.
Okay? Like I said, I'm not an expert. What's your understanding between the open back and the closed back?
I don't want to pretend to be an expert either.
But what's people's opinions?
Well, even with headphones, the response and how the sound travels into your ear is so dependent on the shape of your head and the shape of your ears. And some, they try and kind of make an average design that's going to fit everyone. But if you've got a rounder head, I've got a pretty big head. If they just don't fit well, you're not going to get the accuracy or the bass response. Maybe the driver is just going into the top of your ear instead of your ear canal. For the most part, closed back, a lot of people want those for tracking, so you don't have sound bleeding into a microphone. But open back tends to be more accurate. So it tends to be, if you want to use it for mixing or mastering or for reference, an open back is going to be more accurate.
So here's some Telefunkens. I didn't know they made anything.
Yeah, the Telefunkens are cool. You'll notice it kind of resembles hearing protection.
I was about to say, like, it looks like Vic Firth's.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of isolation. If you're tracking and you don't want headphone bleed into the microphone.
Yeah.
But also if you're a tracking engineer and you want to place a microphone and use the microphone to help find the sweet spot. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I use extreme isolation headphones for exactly the same purpose.
The direct sounds.
Yeah, direct sounds.
They're very similar.
Very similar, yeah. These I see a lot as well.
Yeah, these are another Audis. This is their X line. So this is more friendly off of a common headphone amplifier.
Right.
You want to use a headphone amp on a laptop or an interface that maybe doesn't have an expensive headphone amp in it. These really benefit from stepping up your headphone amp quality, like a SPL here or a Grace or the new Rupert Neve designs or new Little Labs headphones would really benefit.
I like the new Rupert one.
Yeah. But this is going to be, the X is more friendly for your typical headphone
That's cool.
amp. Yeah.
So that's lovely to know. Okay, so talking of which, here we've got the SPL.
Yeah, SPL headphone amps, the Phonitor, and they also have the Phonitor Mini, which sounds very similar. But what's unique about the SPL headphone amps is they have a psychoacoustic effect that feeds the left channel a little into the right and the right channel into the left. So it's more like listening to a pair of speakers.
Oh,
when you're listening to a pair of speakers, the left speaker isn't only going into your, the right speaker isn't only going into your right ear and vice versa. So discreetly, you're getting some crossfeed, you're getting some reflections off the wall. So
interesting.
So this sort of replicates.
Can you turn it off as well?
You can, and there's a degree of how aggressive it is. I've had a lot of composers have been liking that.
I see. So there's the crossfeed control from here. There's the center control, the angle. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's interesting though, because that's actually one of the reasons why I always check my mixes on headphones as well as earbuds and stuff, but on headphones, because I realize that I'm not in a perfectly acoustically treated, wonderful, isolated, whatever the word is, NASA designed room. So I actually do use the headphones just to check my panning is correct. But here, if you're only mixing on headphones, it would be amazing because you could make it feel more real world. Very wonderful. And then, so this is like a...
that's their 2-control.
Right.
It's a simple, high-quality monitor controller. You get a couple inputs, a couple outputs.
But it does have the cross-feed control as well.
It does have cross-feed built in as well, yeah.
That's nice. And another CD player.
Another CD player with the USB stick, yeah, so.
Nice. So you can bring in your own mixers and have a listen.
Yeah.
I see we have some drums with some... Okay, we got to go here because actually this is the first time I've seen one in the flesh, and I have D112s and I also have a D12. So this is the vintage reissue version.
Yeah, that's AKG's D12 VR. So if you use the microphone passively, it's very reminiscent of the classic D12. Mm-hmm. If you engage phantom power, it turns on an EQ.
Oh, nice.
It's in the circuit, and you'll see there's 3 different EQ curves to choose from.
I do.
So it's kind of like 4 mics in one.
Great. What else you got going on here?
This drum kit's interesting. This is a company called Sugar Percussion.
Yep.
Out of Santa Cruz, and the drums are made out of solid wood, so they're not plied.
Oh wow!
And this particular kit is
so it's like dampened and slowly
formed. Yeah,
formed.
Yeah, it's formed and shaped, and
that's a long process.
It's a long process. They have a great video on their website that shows the process. And they also make drums in...
This video is going to have a lot of links underneath the video.
They make drums out of, 9 or 10 different types of wood, and there's actual sound clips on their website of how wood sounds, how the different types of wood sounds. But this particular drum set is the Eric Valentine... So you have a record producer who made a signature drum kit, and he worked with them to pick dimensions of the drums that don't have sympathetic resonances to one another.
That's really smart.
Yeah, so.
It's really smart. We can get a close-up in a second. What I like is that when they've ported it here, they've done this gradual kind of beveled edge, so you can see that this is a pure one piece of wood.
Yeah.
I like that. It's a nice little touch. Just so you know, no, this is not a veneer, this is not a ply, this is a real, pure. Oh, talking of cymbals, what's this? An old Istanbul.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this in the back of the car while you're not looking.
I've never had an allegiance to any particular cymbal
Nor
manufacturer. I just listen to hundreds and pick one out of 200. Yeah.
I'll just steal that later.
Okay.
So this is like a souped-up NS10 kind of kick idea, I suppose?
Yeah, Yamaha discontinued their sub kick, so this line Solomon has sort of filled that niche.
You know, I don't like to be an expert on anything because I'm not, but I will say that we used to, as kids, take the NS10s out, make the sub kick. It always had a sound. There's something about the one they made. Now they've discontinued. I'll be pretty blunt. It just didn't sound as good as just doing it yourself. It seemed to add like a weird resonant frequency. So I wonder if this company kind of came in there and souped it up a bit because there was something they missed. Do you like this?
I do. Yeah. Yeah, and it's also more affordable than the Yamaha, so that doesn't hurt. It's always, I would do the old trick too, and just tuck it in, you know, just fill in the bottom a little bit with it. So for something that's subtle, getting that effect more affordably is always nice.
Yeah, because ultimately, you and I know you can trigger stuff, you can put in samples, but if you can print it in phase with your other mics, you're never going to get anything that good. That's always going to be the best way,
right? Because
the dynamics are going to respond the same way.
Right.
So as you're sitting there playing your kick harder or softer, they're all going to breathe together. So that's pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
How much is this? It's the $200.
That's the price tag you saw before too.
Yeah, $200.
Have you seen the Dynamounts before?
No. Oh, well, I have, but I didn't get to talk to them at Summer NAMM. I wish I had.
Yeah. So it's an XYZ microphone stand that lets you. You connect to an app over Wi-Fi, and you can move the placement of the microphone to find the sweet spot. So.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's next level kind of detail.
Yeah.
You want to recall your recording perfectly?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I would just use interns and finger pointing, but this does it for
Or
you.
what you were saying, you go out there and you move the mic.
Yeah.
You put your headphones on and you move the mic as the drummer's playing.
Yeah.
Yep, I love that stuff. What's this here? I don't know this one.
The Telefunken M82. It's a large diaphragm dynamic.
Right.
So, kick drum, bass cabinet, voiceover. You know.
I like the fact that they make sure they know that it's an end address.
They probably got some tech support calls about how hollow it sounded or something from people speaking it.
There wasn't the old joke with the back when desktop computers first came out. People would, I don't know if it was true, but people would say, "Hey, my drinks holder's broken," because it was the CD tray.
Oh wow.
We can't miss out on these because I have these. I love this guy's stuff. So AEA, really beautiful stuff. Is he still pretty much got access to all the old RCA, new old stock parts?
They're using RCA, new old stock ribbon material.
Wow.
And yeah, that's a historical replica of the 44 using new old stock RCA ribbon material.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, made in Pasadena. So not only does he make the microphones, but if you have an old RCA and you need it serviced,
he used to work there, yes?
I'm not sure about that.
I mean, he's not a young man.
His knowledge, yeah.
I thought he used to work there, but either way, yeah, beautiful, beautiful mics. And you've got a pair of these 451s up
451s, yeah.
One of the best general purpose, condensers out there, pencil condensers. Great. Great for overheads, great for hi-hats, you name it. Wonderful. Okay, well, we have a lot more stuff here. What is this up here? Is this guitar amp?
Yeah, that's a Shure. It's a sort of low wattage amp, or even you could use it as a tube DI.
Oh, really?
Cool little, yeah.
So you can add some presence here. You got a deep control. Oh, I'd love to hear that. Maybe I'll borrow that too. You have the Kemper, which is like ever growing. I'm getting so much stuff to mix now that was tracked with Kempers.
Oh yeah, yeah. The library of amp profiles that you can get not only from Kemper but through now sites that are selling them and giving them away for free. There's a whole community around profiles of different amp collections. But if you spend a lot of time in a studio coming up with an amp tone, you've got a chain and you've got an amp and you've placed the mic in such a way, you can actually capture that on the Kemper and recreate it. So if you've got a punch in down the road, or you've changed around your tone and the guitar player really just wants to redo a solo or a part, it's hard to recreate such a specific chain. It'll take you hours, but with the Kemper you could punch in a part and you wouldn't know the difference. And then you can load the sounds that you got in the studio into the Kemper, and then when you go on tour, you have those sounds with you. And it has a pedal control, so you can cue up a set to match the tones that you need, and just go to the next one and get studio sound on the road. Yeah,
it's incredible. Going back here, the Chandler TG stuff. When I used to work with Dave Sardi, I think he was one of the early adopters of Chandler. He loved it. We used it on every mix. So the curve bender is something I don't have, but I know everybody has and raves about them. Beautiful piece. The Manley, massive passive stereo EQ. I was just using one of these recently over at Hybrid. I think they bought it from you, actually. Great. Retro stuff. You actually lent us a pair of these. We used them on the Aerosmith record. Really wonderful piece of equipment. Spec. What's this?
So the spec here, you'll notice there's actually one in each rack. That is very clean, very transparent 16-channel mixer.
Nice.
Each of the 16 channels is stereo, so it's very accurate. There's no color, there's no tone, there's no harmonic distortion, and so that's what we use in these racks to A/B equipment. So,
Interesting.
So we have a distribution amplifier that feeds the signal to every piece of gear at the same time.
Wonderful.
And so all the gear is getting the same equipment, the same signal, and then with a couple, there's some normals, but with a couple of patches, we could say, A/B the Chandler to the Manley to the Retro.
That's fantastic.
And yeah.
And again, CD player, so you can bring in your own stuff, play your own music, have a listen, and A/B stuff. Some more Pulse Techniques. These are beautiful. Another one down there. All right, the Kush stuff. Now, we were just talking about this because some of the engineers that came in early we were chatting with were coming here just to demo this specifically. This is another piece I see Joe Ciccarelli using a lot in on his mixes, and I'm a huge Ciccarelli fan. So, these presumably are selling pretty well.
They are, yeah. You know, Kush started out. Their first product was a mod for the UBK Fatso, sort of supercharging the Fatso. And since then, they've always come out with really creative, different ways to do equalization and mic pre's. You know, it's not you know, a reissue or another.
No.
You know, it's just sort of a unique approach. So the EQ itself is very straightforward. You know, you see the shimmer, presence, tight, lift, and the EQ can run in parallel. So if you want to do something like, say, maybe a more, you know, aggressive shimmer on a mix that might be, you know, too harsh on its own, but blended with the original program material adds a nice, you know, a nice presence and sort of psychoacoustic reality, you can do it in parallel. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's sort of highly creative but simple to use.
It just feels good. Yeah, you're right. Creative and simple to use is a big deal. There's a part of me that feels like with the way a lot of us are moving into more in the box and mixing, this might just be, you know, I know Joe's been using it on the stereo bus. I mean, I'm not sure how he's blending. He might be blending it lightly. We're talking about Reed Shipham having the ability to be able to move between different stereo bus things. This could be a great thing for you just audition, blend in on your stereo bus and just add some like grit and some presence lift, some shimmer. Yeah. Fantastic piece of equipment. It's nice if you only got a handful of pieces of equipment to just have something you can reach over and play with and not just do everything on a mouse.
Yeah.
More Masonic?
Yeah, so the other one was a multi-band compressor.
Yep.
This one's a multi-band compressor and expander.
Oh, wow.
So from band to band, you can do either. So, yeah.
Right. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's underrated on SSL, the expanders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I use expansion a lot. These are great. This is the DCF, so this is the Val Garay kind of. I know Val asked Mark to add that mod. I think that's a really, really nice idea. Where's the frequency selection? So it's here. So basically this has a sidechain function where you can, what's he got it on? 50, 80, 180, right up to 300, which actually can be kind of nice with bass guitars and stuff, to let it come all the way up to there, some of those low mids. So I have a pair of these. I really like them. I don't have the filter version. I got them before the filter was added. So maybe I should ask Mark if he could do something. But those are really wonderful. So, yeah, so basically on the 33609, I feel like this, to me, to be honest, I actually prefer these, and this is contentious, I prefer them to using the 33609s. I found like when I have the Neve compression like that old school compression on the 33609, I felt like it was too spongy unless I was specifically trying to do something 70s and spongy sounding. I found that the BAE stuff and the way he's designed this allows me to use it in a lot more instances. Now this I use when I'm tracking bass guitar. These are really, really nice on bass guitars. I use them a lot on guitars, between that and my Spectrasonics, which I'm also a big fan of. I know you guys are fans with you and Pete of that as well. And, you know, this is the great thing about, you know, talking about the G-Comp and about this. People, you know, we're being forced into with EDM and stuff like that, and the way that the worlds are colliding with organic music, with dance music and stuff, to be able to like add sidechain and filtering and making, you know, compressors and EQs more useful in many, many different attributes.
Sure.
There's a handful of people that are able to specialize. I only do, you know, Albanian folk music, but most of us that live in the real world, we're moving between dance, organic, completely acoustic, heavy rock, you know. So you need compressors and EQs and stuff that are very, very flexible. So I think this is a pretty nice little piece of gear. Now, I got to meet Doug in the flesh at Summer NAMM, and what a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And it just comes from a really honest place, and I love that, you know, that he was just sitting there on his own booth, describing his own product and why he designed it and what it did, and it was a really unique experience to be able to talk to the designer. I mean, again, I think you lent us something for the Aerosmith record, and I felt like that this was a really beautiful piece of equipment.
Yeah, he's a master craftsman for sure.
Good. Well, that's probably all we need to say. Wonderful. CD player. Hey. Overstayers. Now, this is something I only learnt about, I think Rob Snaff and a couple of other people turned me onto this. It's a local guy, isn't it?
Yeah, Jeff Turzo, and kind of what you mentioned before, equipment being built by engineers for engineers.
Yeah.
He's really the epitome of that. He is an engineer producer. He's got a ton of credits, and he's in the LA scene a lot, and has a lot of friends that are using his equipment, and you know, sort of conferring with them. What would you like? How would you like it to work? And this is what I think. And you try out a prototype, and let's put our heads together and really come up with something.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So these two units are sort of a VCA style compressor, and a stereo FET style compressor, maybe 1178-ish. But he has a very musical harmonic distortion effect that can go from very subtle to rather aggressive as a creative tool. And then wet dry blend, so that you can, you know, maybe.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that is starting to separate the men from my boys when I come to see people that are designing compressors now. That wet dry function is massive because it's parallel compression in a box.
Yeah.
I can just sit there, I can already have a drum mix going, and then I can go to this and destroy it, or whatever I want to do, make it pump, and then just blend it back in, and it's a real game changer. And even on the stereo bus, you know, you go back to like using, say, the Dangerous there, we initially talked about, you can sit there and you can audition different parallel compressors that you've done, and for a lot of mixers now, I mean, again, you could be in the box and just have that, and just have a pair of different things that you can audition. Yeah, that's good.
So he also has sidechain filters, like we discussed before.
Great.
And you know, you can do an external sidechain in for the sort of pump effect off the kick drum. And these units are well under $2,000.
You know, this is a wonderful thing about what digital technology is forcing everybody to do, is addressing this stuff and bringing real bang for the buck on pieces of equipment. Because you can do so much stuff with plugins now, you know, but now what's happening is it's making guys like Jeff come back, and Mark with that, come back and add all these additional features, so you really get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, next up.
A-Designs, the Nail compressor.
Never used one.
They're a local company.
Right.
They're built locally, and it's essentially two compressors in one. So you'll notice the two thresholds there.
Yeah.
So great for sort of getting one to get your musical hug, and then one to maybe catch peaks.
Right.
Or for a loudness effect, or you know, sometimes if you over compress something, it kind of gets a little pumpy, you know, and you get the artifacts of the compression. Well, by doing two in one, you can get a little compression out of one, a little compression out of another, and the end result is a louder, more compressed signal without introducing as many compression artifacts. So,
nice.
Yeah, really, really cool, flexible tool for
fantastic.
Not only mix, bus, or mastering, but to do that kind of effect on a vocal. You know, a lot of times in big mix rooms, you'll see the vocal running through, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 compressors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you know, so.
I do in the box stuff, and then I'm still even tapping it with my SSL.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got a lot, and I've also recorded through 2 compressors initially. You know, it's there's a lot of, as you're saying, a lot of different stages going on. Now, Jeff Daking is, I often say, as much as I love all of these different guys that I've worked with and their stuff, he made the Trident A range, whether he calls it or not, Mike Pre, and I was talking to Joe Barisi a couple of months ago when I went to his studio, and he has one in the rack, one of the original ones. It's that kind of stands up, kind of big, fat, stubby looking one. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, the best vocal sound I've ever got is using one of those original ones. And Joe's very candidly said, oh yeah, that's the best. That's the best mic pre out there. There's something about Jeff, he's so understated. Whenever he has like a booth, he's like his stuff is so good sounding. And I know people that he builds consoles for that absolutely love his stuff. So I haven't used this stereo compressor. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
It's a 2-channel or stereo FET compressor.
Yep.
So I don't know that the Trident A range had that style of compression in it. I would liken it more to you know, maybe like an 1178, but it's a little cleaner than that. So it doesn't give you as much of the gritty, you know, 1176 or 1178 kind of 1176 sound. It's cleaner to me, so that makes it a little more functional to actually put it on a mix, but still get, you know, that sort of presence and forwardness that you get from an FET compressor.
And the same thing, I don't know if you know this, he was the drummer in the Blues Magoos.
I know.
You know that?
Yeah, I have Psychedelic Lollipop on vinyl twice.
Wow.
I have yet to. I should get him to sign one copy, but
You should. Yeah, not many people know that. I did a record a few years ago, and he came down and he lent us some stuff while we were doing the record and trying out. And the band that I was working with were older guys from the 60s, and they freaked out. And they're like, "You're in the Blues Magoos? I used to go and see you live in Greenwich Village like every Saturday."
Yeah.
It comes back to that, like, you know, the guys that we're talking about all the time, the guys that are making this stuff are just passionate musicians, engineers and producers, and I love that.
Yeah.
Rupert Neve, new stuff here. I haven't used this.
Rupert Neve's Master Bus Processor.
Yeah.
I think it's their best-selling product.
Oh, it is?
Next to the consoles, which are tremendously popular. It is a stereo bus processor, so you've got compression and limiting.
Yep.
And you know, like we spoke about before, you could do both at the same time. But you also have mid-side effect, and so you can actually affect the width and the depth of the center channel.
Wow.
And then EQ sidechain frequencies on any of the above. So if you want to, you know, kind of bring the vocal forward, but darken it up a little bit or make it a little richer, you have that kind of control. So
That's amazing.
It's like a Swiss Army knife for the stereo bus. It's really, really nice.
So, Dramatic Audio, I haven't had a chance to play with this yet, but this Obsidian stereo compressor, I've been told by so many people I have to hear this. What can you tell me about it?
So, you know, again, not reinventing the wheel. It is the VCA style stereo bus compressor.
Yep.
The designer of that was, as far as I know, the sort of leading SSL field technician in the Boston area. There's a lot of
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of SSL consoles up there, and so, you know, having been under the hood of them for many years and working on them and servicing them, this sort of takes that style of compression, but supercharges it. Transformer balanced, so the SSL style compressor doesn't have transformers because it's in the console. There's no reason to balance it to travel out of the console. So you get a different style of amplifier. It's a little more open, faster, transformer balanced in and out. As we keep seeing, the high pass filter and the external side chain. So just a sort of supercharge on the circuit with some of the bells and whistles that people are using a lot now. Yeah,
those that have this just swear blind that I should hear it over my bus compressor that's built into my console. Next down, we see we have some Allen Smarts.
The Allen Smarts, yeah. The Smart C1, the black one there, was the very first new product that Vintage King ever carried.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, after we had been in business for about 10 years or so, only doing vintage and used, and the Smart C1 was the first new product we carried in '99.
Right. That's amazing. Right, now, inward connections. The VAC rack stuff, I know Chris, you know, CLA has racks of this stuff. He loves this. I mean, he has them on
16 channels of it, maybe.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. It's on everything.
Yeah.
And whenever I mix with him, I just watch meters going like crazy.
I think they're all like this too.
Yeah.
All the way, max gain reduction, max makeup gain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge part of his sound. So as much as he loves his SSL, and I've never seen a guy move so fast on SSL in my life. He makes me look like a total beginner. He's like, this is a big part of his sound. And these are beautiful pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
Next down, we've got a 2500.
API 2500, API stereo bus compressor. It's very full-bodied, very high energy.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. Personal opinion, don't use it on my master bus. Love it on a drum bus.
A lot of people do. Yeah.
And again, just personal opinion. Other people have great times on the master bus. So more the Buzz Audio, the company you were telling us about from New Zealand.
Yeah, we saw Buzz Audio's equalizer before.
Yeah.
And so this is a stereo optical compressor from them, and it is in the lines of their mastering offerings. So you'll see it could function as two mono compressors or a stereo, but it has a mid-side option as well. So you can affect the center channel separate from the outsides.
Wow.
Just, you know, overbuilt, really good build quality, a lot of control over the attack and the release.
And then this diode bridge compressor underneath.
Yeah. So, you know, more of a funky, creative. You know, you want to smack a a bottom snare mic or a room mic, or
Oh, yeah.
or maybe get really aggressive on a rap vocal or something like that. It's a fun piece.
All right, so I'm excited because look, you have a Compex. So they're reissuing them?
So yes, it's not so much a reissue. It's more like it's back in production.
Right. It looks exactly identical.
Yeah, the company Q2 that builds this is actually coincidentally Vintage King's chief technician, a guy named Tim Mead. So Tim has been with Vintage King for maybe 20 years, and over the years, as we had done Helios and ADR restorations, Tim's been our guy who's done a lot of those restorations. And over the years, in corresponding with the original ADR folks, and getting parts and going through schematics and clarifying details, they essentially rebuilt the Compex just by servicing them for 20 years. And so after they'd done that, they said, well, we've essentially rebuilt it. Let's put it back in production and bring it back.
That's great.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite compressors. I actually had a pair of vintage modules. I had two of the vertical modules, and I traded them into Vintage King and bought one of the reissues.
Yeah.
Because they're so close sonically, and it's easier to use the stereo. I always use it on drums.
Yeah.
If you max out the input and the output all the way up, then the stereo control takes over. So now you've just got one gain control for in and one gain control for out. And on my vintage modules, I was always running tone through them and trying to match them. And
Yeah, well, look, everybody that has the Compexes worships them, loves them, says they're the best thing ever. But I always joke with people on and off camera, everybody always says the same thing. When they first get a pair, they're like, I can't make this sound good. And then they go, oh my God, I found it. It's like a little bit of a learning curve to get it. I mean, you just told me something I didn't even know, so that really helps. I hadn't thought about doing that, as obvious as it is, to max the in and out. But they're that sort of holy grail kind of like moment, halo moment, or whatever you want to say, that when you get it, and it gets that sound, you like can't believe how good it can be. But it's funny, we always joke about it on and off camera, that the learning curve on them is a little steep.
It is,
But once you get it, you love it.
And it's the same compressor that you'll see as the Helios 760.
Yeah.
So what was in the Helios console, which would be like the John Bonham Levy Breaks room sound.
Right.
So probably one of the most sampled, drum riffs.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now you make me want one even more. Yeah. They had one down in Echo Park in Indiana, and I think it took me like 3 hours to make it sound the way I wanted to. I got it sounding good, I was tracking, and then I'm like, I come up, and then like an hour later I go, and then like the third time I'm like, oh, don't touch it.
They just came out, we don't have them yet, but just this week they announced that they're shipping a 500, mono 500 module of the same thing. So that's
that will probably be very popular.
Yeah.
So more UPK stuff.
Yeah, so that's the first product that Kush came out with.
And it does have that feeling of Empirical Labs. So this is this souped up kind of...
It is the Empirical Labs Fatso, but modified the electronics a little bit, but also modified the, it's a digital control of an analog circuit.
Sure.
So modified the presets and the functionality. So...
Nice.
Yeah.
Toasty, comfy, splat, smooth, spank. See, spank, I just think SSL. So if people say to me, what do you like about SSL? I'm just like, yes, that's spank.
Yeah.
Okay, loads of fun stuff down here, of which I don't know. What's the TK?
TK Audio comes out of Europe, a boutique company, really high build quality, really high value.
It looks G-Series, is it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that compressor is just, that sound is so popular. You get slight variations from version of it to version of it, but at the end of the day...
I think what we'll come back and do in other videos is do comparisons with stuff, just so people can hear the versions of what these can all do. Because there's the Obsidian here, the 500 series version as well. There's, what's this in the middle? A Smart Research as well?
That's a Smart C1, so the same, the black C1 here, it's the 500 version of it. It has a few more bells and whistles, like it's got the high pass sidechain that's coming up so much in a external sidechain input.
There's a Sunset Sound logo on it.
Yeah, Sunset Sound's the distributor and the service center for them in the United States, so they really...
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, because I love Mick and Ren over there. Those two techs are great. They're both fantastic.
If you need service on your Smart, you end up talking to Mick. So
yeah. And Mick used to be at Trident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was at Trident in the late 70s.
Yeah.
He was there when, you know, Trident was Trident. So it's just great to have. You know, I say all the time, there's no substitute for experience. You know, when you're talking to people who've been working on this equipment for decades, they've seen everything.
Yeah.
You know, they know when something, oh yeah, that's always, you know, to get somebody like that on the phone and go, he's going to hate me for saying this, he once fixed something for me in like 10 minutes that may have taken somebody else 3 hours. And when I said to him, how much do I owe you? He goes, $10 bottle of wine.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, we've got hundreds of 500 modules in the
Which
shops.
will take us about 6 hours to go through.
Maybe we'll do just kind of a 500 day or something.
We're going to do a 500 day.
But you know, one thing that comes up now that we're kind of talking about the stereo bus 500 modules and all the mono ones are here, you know, a lot of people say, are they as good? You know, is it as good? And a lot of times it is the same circuits, right? The Smart C1 LA compared to the Smart C1 or the Dramatic Obsidian 500 compared to the Rack Mount 500, the amplifiers, the circuits, the VCA circuits for the compression are the same. But what really separates the 500 modules is your power supply. Right. And the quality of the chassis. There's, you know, dozens and dozens of third-party manufacturers that are trying to work together to have this universal format, but a lot of them are competitors. So they don't really talk together or work together or test their prototypes together. But you know, some of the higher quality 500 racks, better build quality, better conductivity, better power supplies, and that translates to the module sounding better. So like the purple racks here are great. Everyone designs around the API because that was kind of the benchmark that, you know, started the whole revolution.
Right.
And then up on the shelf there, we've got the Mercury racks where each slot of the rack is a voltage regulated power supply. So that if you've got one compressor pumping on one channel for your crushing a drum room, and then you've got, say, a cello on another channel.
Which is your Mercury? You mean the Rupert one?
The Mercury, it's up there.
Oh, up there.
It's up there, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so just super overbuilt power supply, and then each slot is voltage regulated so that...
Yeah, Jonathan Rupert was telling me the same thing. He was saying it is all about your voltage.
Yeah, the Rupert Neve box sounds good. So yeah, if you stick with any, you know, spend a little bit more on the better power supply, it really results in better sound. It's worth the investment.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, and they used to say that about PAs. You know, it's all about voltage. You know, and another thing, which is like Marshalls in England and Marshalls in America sound completely different.
Oh yeah, because they're running on 240 in England and
and 110 over here.
Yeah.
I came over here and I plugged in my Marshall, and we sat there and we changed the voltage on the back of my old Marshall when I first moved here to track an album, and I was like, the bottom end's I was so used to standing in front of this Marshall for 10 years as a kid. And then I plug it in over here, and I'm like, all the bottom ends disappeared. It's like, you know, I realized that the 800 over here was considered to be very, very bright, which it is. The Marshall 800 was super bright, but it was all the voltage. It was the fact that it was running off less than half the voltage. So now it's all now it all makes sense to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back and come around and actually start putting audio through stuff, because I know the number one comment we're going to get on this video is like, we want to hear it.
Right.
So we'll come back and do audio. Now, there's so much 500 series stuff here that's great, but there's also, as you can see in the peripheral microphones here, but if Alec follows us in here, one of the things that's wonderful about coming here, and has been great for so many of the engineers and producers and mixers that I know, the reason why we like to come here is because we get to try the stuff out. And this is really set up really, really well. Yeah, can you get in enough? So the way that the guys have got it set up here is that you can literally turn on and audition every single one of these mics. Now I'm presuming, Jeff, these are all going through exactly the same mic pre each time.
Right.
So the only coloration is going to be the difference in the mic. So it's a comparative test. Which I think is the best thing. You know, you take one standard mic pre and then do comparative. This is crazy. I mean, you've got all the way from the low end here, the Aston, Telefunken C12, the reissue, you know, the 251s, the 47 clones, long body stubbies, you name it, the new Slate, the Manleys, I mean, everything. Perlmans.
Yeah, we could only fit 24 microphones in here at the same time, so
that's great.
There's probably, I don't know, Another
563 I see there.
That's
CMV5.
That's one of my favorite mics. It's beautiful.
It's one of my favorite mics
yeah,
ever.
yeah.
Yeah, huge fan. The Gefell, it's, yeah. A pair of those on your rooms, on anything, is just like unbelievable, as well as a vocal
It's
mic.
been doing really well on female vocals.
Good.
It's been really, really shining there.
I think it's like a, well, I'm not going to say this. I am going to say it. It's like a souped up 47. It's like everything I like about 47s, but kind of more.
Yeah. Well, you know, Gefell was the original Neumann company.
Yes.
And they're still in the same factory, and their address is George Neumann Place, Gefell, Germany. So the street's named after George, and
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so their craftsmanship and their build quality, it's really as it was in the golden age of mic building. They do a wonderful job.
Yep, amazing. So we're going to come back and we're going to go through and do all of that and do some actual comparisons, so you guys can actually, guys and girls, can hear the differences between stuff. One other thing, follow us. So this is the other fun thing that we're going to do. We've got to figure out how we're going to be able to show you guys everything, but we'll do something. We were talking about maybe putting up a dummy head.
A binaural head, yeah.
That might be kind of
give
fun.
it a shot.
I mean, anything to try and demonstrate the stuff. But look, it's kind of a nice selection of speakers here. Now, there's a new Genelex, which I just got a pair to try out. There's some Adams. There's all the different Barefoots, which I'm sure all of you have been reading about and hearing about. There's Focals with a similar kind of technology going on here. This is an hour-long conversation I'm sure that you and I are going to be having at a later date. So we're going to come back here and try out all the different speakers as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Jeff, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. We could be here for about 27 hours and still only scratch the surface. So we're going to come back and start putting audio through stuff.
Okay.
So we can really talk about what everything does. Because I know that's going to be the number one comments that are going to come underneath here is like, well, what does this sound like?
Sure.
So I think that'll be a lot of fun. And then we can just talk about the differences and the hows and whys and, you know, really give people an understanding of what this really does.
Okay.
So thanks ever so much.
Sounds fun.
As usual, please leave a bunch of questions and comments below. Also, frankly, tell us what you want to hear more about. Because this is, you know, this is driven by you, what you really care about. Because a lot of people love consoles. A lot of people are interested in summing. A lot of people are interested in great microphones and in front end and stuff. And I want this to be driven by you. So please leave any suggestions you have, any questions you have, and we'll incorporate into future stuff.
I could even one up that if anybody
Please.
wants to send us a file, we could take their file and use that as the.
That's a great idea.
As long as we're allowed to use the music, if that's okay, then we could use their file to run it through the equipment, and then.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
That was totally off the cuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know what? Email us and send us any audio. And I don't know if we're going to get to be able to do 200 or 300 different submissions, but please try. You know, let's have a conversation about this. Let's talk about it below. Very excited. Thank you ever so much for allowing us to come and do this, because, you know, not a lot of places are going to let me come in and just film for the purposes of just trying to educate people. So it's a big deal. So lots of questions and comments below. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and look forward to seeing you again soon.